21, check 124. TD, RSO, wind waiting is green, RSO is green.
Copy, TD is green. T-minus 7 minutes and counting. We are go for launch.
Space.com reported that NASA launched 2 small rockets from Virginia's eastern shore on the 4th of July.
1, 0, plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Here they are taking off from NASA's Wallops Flight Facility. One of these rockets delivered a huge quantity of lithium into our atmosphere.
Payload deployed. Within a degree of the B field.
In FEMA Region 3. Here we see the 2 different rocket trails as they went up. This one did have the lithium and deployed its payload.
Payload deployed.
As you see here. All of these red dots are payload deployment.
Deployed.
This is all lithium. Now NASA claims that the reason why they had a joint project with Japan was that they were showing Japan how lithium is used in the atmosphere to aid in the use of frequency for communications and military purposes. That lithium deployment was directed northeastward, and you may be able to see some of the undulations here. Then it was turned westward and then directed in a southerly direction. And as you can see, NEXRADs and satellites are spiking the entire area of FEMA Region 3, from Maine all the way down to North Carolina. As a conductive metal that falls upon the population below in the form of a mind-altering compound called lithium carbonate. And lithium is constantly being used to fortify artificially conductive skies. That is why, when used in chemtrails, lithium's use is very temporary, resulting in a dingy, gray, worthless chemdross. Lithium carbonate
first portion of the radar cycle fairly bland and typical, but then you see these bands of very distinct cloud cover moving into the region. That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff. Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic or even metallicized paper.
The little picture is from a nanofabrication study, which shows you can make very high quality, and do this in just a jet in a very simple way, make high quality alumina particles just by spraying aluminum vapor out, which oxidizes. So it's certainly in principle possible to do that. There's a big literature that's already looked at that. And you could do that by either building new versions of these aircraft or even re-engineering existing aircraft. So there's some ideas of that. So you go to an engineering firm and you want this done. They don't say this is hard or unusual. They say, okay, yes, we could do it. Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue. That means that implementation decisions will be risk-to-risk decisions. The risk of doing it against the risk of not doing it. And it makes the problem of how we govern it fundamentally harder and different and novel. So I've told you that it's cheap to deliver materials to the stratosphere, and I'm convinced that's true. I don't think that will change.
Thank you, Laura.
Rick, what does population stabilization mean, and how do you seek to enforce that?
Well, we're not the epigones of Malthus, as some would have you believe, but the world population is a concern. The Associated Press just has an article today saying that the world population is going to reach 7 billion people by the year 2012. We're 6.7 billion people today. And so, you know, what it means for Americans is unrestrained population growth. I'm a baby boomer. I was born in the middle of the last century. The population of the country has doubled in my lifetime. Those kids in high school today are going to see 500 million people living in America. And the question we're asking is, why do we need to have this growth, and where's it coming from? And we've located the source.
Right.
Over 80% of it is coming from immigration and the children that immigrants have.
Okay, so what do you propose? I'm going to go back to the basics here, because I'm just going to let you carry on with this crazy idea that people are bad and we should have fewer of them, because I actually like people. I want to have more people. But let's say you're right, okay? How do you enforce your worldview? Is this an international body that somehow mandates population growth? I mean, China's trying that with its one-child policy, and then after the big natural disaster there, they're going, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea after all. We're going to lose population.
Our concern is about American population growth, and of course California. With 37 million people in California today, going to be 60 million people in the next 2 to 3 decades.
So you have no idea, Rick. I can't. This is driving me crazy. You're driving me crazy.
Our idea
you have a plan, Rick? You're spouting off things from an office in California. This is my question. You're saying something very controversial here, and I hope people understand what you're saying. You think there should be fewer people in the United States? I'm trying to figure out which people are the undesirables. With your worldview,
this is
how
unbelievable.
do you enforce this one child per person utopia? How do you do it? Enough with the spouting. I don't want to hear that.
We don't use the word undesirable. What we want to do is to see the immigration laws enforced to cut down the numbers of the influx of illegal aliens into the country, which is driving almost all of the population growth in this country. We want the immigration laws enforced. We don't feel that it's a fair trade-off to leave open borders so employers can have access to cheap labor and to overpopulate the country for the future generation.
Okay, well, you and I agree about illegal immigration. Okay, we agree on one thing, that we need to enforce our borders, enforce our laws. But you go from that to saying, population stabilization, which sounds a lot like population control, which sounds a lot like this crazy alarmism in the population bomb. I think wasn't that the book in the 70s? All their predictions turned out to be completely ridiculous and never came to pass. So I want you to be real careful here, Rick, and you don't get into those very murky waters. I think that's a dangerous place for you to go. You don't have to go that far to argue that America's a sovereign country and we should enforce our borders. I don't think you have to go that far.
Well, that's true. We also don't need to get to the Malthusian apocalypse or the predictions of the population bomb to understand that overpopulation decreases standards of living. We have problems with healthcare, education.
Increasing around the world. People are living longer around the world, Rick. The population, is going up, but we actually also have people who are being born who come up with cures for diseases, who innovate, who become entrepreneurs, and become, wonderful, loving people who pass down a culture to the next generation. immigration. So I would agree with you. You have to manage these things, but the idea that you can somehow through, I guess argument or column writing or whatever it is that you do, that somehow you're going to stop people from having children. I don't think that's the problem. I think it's standing up for your country and sovereignty, and that's fine. Do you see what I'm saying?
Our goal is to remind people that the population continues to grow faster than India or China, and that the source of that population growth is unrestrained immigration and the federal government not enforcing the immigration law. That's what's causing it. People are good. I've heard the argument, waiting for the mythical Mozart. Yes, there's
right, but you're worried about
geniuses that haven't been born yet.
Right.
But we're worried about this country and the future generations of this country and what they're going to have to deal with if we don't get control of our borders.
Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. Now that's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. We've seen now there's a type of foreign assistance for vaccines or for AIDS treatment that are incredibly effective. These are all about saving lives. And the good news is that as you make those breakthroughs, the population growth in the country goes down. We've seen now there's a type of foreign assistance for vaccines or for AIDS treatment that are incredibly effective. These are all about saving lives. And the good news is that as you make those breakthroughs, the population growth in the country goes down. We've seen now there's a type of foreign assistance for vaccines or for AIDS treatment that are incredibly effective. These are all about saving lives. And the good news is that as you make those breakthroughs, the population growth in the country goes down. So this is a wish. It's a very concrete wish that we invent this technology. If you gave me only one wish for the next 50 years, I can pick who's president, I can pick a vaccine, which is something I love, I can pick a vaccine.
Gauges from North Carolina all the way north to Massachusetts showed what appears to match the definition of a tsunami.
Officials believe the 6-foot wave was a Mateo tsunami, which are caused by strong weather systems that lead to a jump in air pressure. That spike creates strong waves that mimic tsunamis.
The wave was about 6 feet tall, sweeping 3 people off the coast and injuring 2. This is the first time a tsunami has been recorded off the coast of New Jersey in 80 years. A storm system that moved across New Jersey just before the tsunami is being investigated as a possible factor.
Living around here, we've had the earthquakes, Sandy and all these things lately. It seems like it's, what next?
The weather system drenching parts of New South Wales continues to bring heavy rain and the threat of floods.
Parts of the south coast have now received triple their average June rainfall in just 3 days. It bucketed down again today. Even the horses have had enough as paddocks were turned into lakes. It came up in just a few hours last night and could take a few days to clear. Another concern, coastal erosion as wild seas batter the coast.
Locals say it's a 1 in 100 year event, and this just happened to be their year.
Now, here in the east, we're worried about a lot of rain. Take a look at what it looked like yesterday in Pennsylvania, parts of central PA near State College. I mean, heavy rain, flash flooding. Folks had to be rescued by boat. There were streets that were inundated, turned into rivers. I mean, literally within a matter of minutes, they had to do a lot of high water rescues.
And guess what? We now have the wettest June ever recorded in Philadelphia, 10.11 inches, beating the old record. We still have a couple days to go. Meanwhile, in Wilmington, there are nearly 12 inches of rain, way over the old record, 0.9 inches. That's one of the wettest months of any time of the year that we've ever seen.
A big rain-producing weather system just parked along the coastline for days, showing no signs right now of moving. It has caused flooding in rural and urban areas from the Carolinas to New England, and just today, tornado sightings and significant damage in the area around New York City.
This is the kind of heat we expect out here in late summer. Not only is this brutal heat wave hitting earlier than usual, it's expected to be the worst in a decade. Tucson was hotter than Cairo, Egypt. California's Death Valley hotter still, approaching 130 degrees.
We could see temperatures at least very close to the hottest temperatures ever recorded on Earth.
Researchers say get used to it. Alexander Gershinoff, who studies climate change at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, says western heat waves are changing.
The new types of heat waves that are becoming increasingly frequent are humid heat waves, and with high humidity we actually have much hotter nighttime temperatures.
Bill mentioned that the temperature in Death Valley, California was approaching 130. Well, the hottest day ever recorded on Earth was in Death Valley, almost exactly 100 years ago, July 10th, 1913. It hit 134.
On this Monday, 19 firefighters have been killed while battling a fast-moving wildfire about 85 miles northwest of Phoenix. They were part of an elite group of specially trained firefighters called Hot Shots. Officials say the crew was overtaken by the flames and had deployed their personal fire shelters in a final attempt to save themselves. It's the single worst loss of firefighters battling a wildfire since 1933.
And turning now to the weather. Heavy downpours are continuing to batter large parts of this country. 9 provinces actually and municipalities have been affected.
The severe convective weather started around 3:10 p.m. on Sunday. Some residential houses have been inundated and road traffic was severely affected.
The storm has caused 39 deaths and 13 are still missing. North China and cities in the middle and lower reaches of the Yangtze River have also been hardest hit.
Flooding and landslides unleashed by torrential rains in southwest China's Chongqing municipality has led to 2 deaths as of Monday, according to the Ministry of Civil Affairs. In Chongqing, nearly 880,000 people have been affected and over 100,000 evacuated.
Scenes of devastation following a magnitude 6.2 earthquake that struck Indonesia on Tuesday, killing at least 22 and injuring more than 200.
They say the jolt damaged about 300 houses and buildings. 2 apparent aftershocks measuring magnitude 5 triggered landslides. Some people remain missing.